So, yep, we are ready to get started. Again, I'm Alex Busco, and I am here on the line with Rick Almeida and Justin Collier, and welcome. First, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. This class is being recorded, so please look out for a recording in your inbox. Please download the handout. You can find it on the panel on the side. And then we would like to make this class as interactive as possible, so please put any questions you have in the questions box on the right. And then at the end of the class, we have an exit survey. Please take a few minutes to take it. We really appreciate your feedback. Next, I'd like to go through some training options. So we have bi-monthly training, which is Collaborator 101, where we just go over the basics, code review benefits, best practices of code review, getting the most out of Collaborator. And then we have advanced trainings held quarterly, so that's Collaborator 201 and 301. And then after you attend all three classes, you get a graduate certificate sent to you. And then for premium training, 2 course offerings, there are 2 options available: 1 half-day end user or a half-day admin setup and configuration training. All right, so coming up in September, we are hosting our very first user conference, SmartBear Connect 2017. Day 1 will consist of live, interactive product training classes, and Day 2 will feature unique insights from SmartBear customers and industry experts. So please visit smartbear.com/connect 2017 for more information. All right, so like I mentioned before, with us today we have Development Manager Rick Almeida, myself in Customer Marketing, and Product Owner Justin Collier. And then, Rick, I'm going to hand it off to you to go over the slide.
Cool. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, so I'm not sure how many of you have been on the 101s, 201s before. I definitely know a few of you when I look through the list. Looks like most people here are regulated. Yeah, so we're kind of in an SE transition right now. Dan Carlin, who's been running this, has moved on to bigger and better things, and Albert, our new sales engineer, is not quite up to speed and his calendar's booked. So, hey, you brought in a couple of the old SEs to run the show for you. So I'm Rick. I'm the development manager. Was an SE maybe a year ago, and then we've got Justin, the product owner, who many of you probably know was the SE maybe 4 years ago. And we're just going to wing it. There aren't too many people here today, so feel free to put your questions in the chat box, and we can stop and we can look at any of those questions or any of the features of the tool that you want to see. Today we're really going to talk about SCMs, pre-commit reviews, post-commit reviews, and really the difference in what different teams do based on, well, feedback that we get. We'll talk about metrics that are generated and why they're important, why we think they're important, and maybe touch upon how we've seen them used. And then we'll talk about customizing the review workflow, and that's one of the major selling points of the tool. Especially when you go to scale, you want to have multiple teams using it. Well, different teams want to work differently. We'll show you how you can customize the tool for different teams without interacting or interrupting current work that may be going on, right? And then we'll talk about doc review really quickly. Collaborator, again, a lot of people don't use it just for code review. I said again, but a lot of people don't use it just for code review. They use it for document review. And it's a quickly growing kind of piece of our user base, and definitely something that Justin and I are focused on for this year and going into next year, making that better, adding document review features that people keep asking about. And then lastly, we'll take a quick look at the IDE Integrations, Visual Studio, and Eclipse, and then kind of talk about what's going on with those. So again, we have a small group today. There's only about 10 or 12 people on the call, so feel free to drop questions in there, and we'll just alter the course to fit all that stuff in there, and again, try to make this as interactive as possible. that being said, I am going to try and share my screen. And there we go. All right, so the first thing we want to talk about are source control systems. And if I just go to version control system here, oops. If I just go into the help and go into the version control system, we can take a look at the ones that Collaborator supports. So one of the big things with us is that it really doesn't matter what source control system you're using. We support just about everyone under the sun. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit on these. All right, so it doesn't matter whether it's Accurev or Git or any of the IBM products, right? Or things like Mercurial, which is kind of a precursor to Git. And then we also see a lot of use of Perforce and PTC Integrity, Subversion. We're really all over the map. Nowadays, everyone is either moving to Git or wants to be on Git and maybe stuck in one of these older source control systems, so we do have great Git integration. Collaborator was originally developed in Subversion, and then it was transitioned over to Git. So we actually developed Collaborator in Git. So we have great support for Git. And we have this great command line tool, which I will pull up, command line or GUI tool, that supports most, if not all, of these SCMs, right? You can see I've got Perforce in here, we've got Git in here. And this tool basically allows me to create a review in any way that I want to. So I can use this tool, for example, with Git or for Subversion, and I can create pre-commit reviews, post-commit reviews, right? And what's the difference? Well, pre-commit is just that. In Subversion, for example, I can go and I can check out some code, right? And I can make changes. And for example, let me zoom in a little. So here's some code, right? And this is just how it's checked out. And I can go and make changes to this. See if my Control Z works. There it does. So I've made some changes, right? I just filled out this method body. Now I can do a pre-commit review right now, and that means that I'm going to create a review before I actually commit. I'm not going to do an SVN commit. I'm going to go in here and say, you know, let's see what changes I've made. Let's create a pre-commit review. Right, and you can see that Collaborator goes out and figures out, hey, you modified main.java. That must be what you want to review. You can also include other stuff, right, or exclude files if you want to, but we're just going to take the default, and then it's going to go create this review, and it's going to show me what I checked out versus what's currently on disk in my local workspace. So this is pre-commit, and we'll support this for just about any SCM that we have. If I just scroll in or zoom in on main.java, I'll make this a little bigger. You can see that we went from no method implementation to this Fibonacci method here, right? And I can get this reviewed before I check it in. So a lot of teams do work this way, and we have gated check-ins for a lot of SCMs. So you can go and gate your SVN check-in so that, hey, guess what? You cannot commit without mentioning a review ID in the commit message, and that review has to be complete so that you know that everything that gets actually committed has been through review. Right now, when we start talking about DVCS or distributed version control systems like Git, which is what I started to talk about, generally we'll see post-commit reviews being done. Now I can go to Git and I can do the same thing, and I can use add changes, right? And I can create a pre-commit review. That means I haven't even committed locally. But with Git, for the most part, people will commit to their local branch, and they'll use a button here like add unpush commits, right? And that's going to attach anything that's local that I have not actually pushed up to the server, right? So it's kind of like a pre-commit, a post-commit pre-push review. And our pull request integration works fairly similar to this. So if I were to go take a look at our manual here, right? Recently we've added support for, we call them repository hosting service integrations, right here on the left. Really what these are Git servers, right? Because GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket are taking over the world for the most part, right? Everyone loves GitHub. Everyone knows what GitHub is. Many organizations are moving to GitHub, and you know, one of the things that I carry with me is I went to GitHub Universe not too long ago, a couple of years ago, and there was a speaker there from NASA JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab, and the impact that GitHub has had over there has been phenomenal, and the main reason that he cited was that they have a single central server across all teams, and of course you can secure your repositories, but the default option on a repository is public. So you have this internal GitHub server, and if you create a repository by default, everyone in your organization can see it. And they actually started tracking code being used between different kind of segmented business units or teams over there, and they realized that once they installed GitHub, all of a sudden everyone was sharing, right? So these are really social coding platforms. GitHub is great. We switched Collaborator over, the Collab development team over to GitHub January, the beginning of the year, something like that, specifically so that we could make our GitHub integration fantastic, because we review all the code that goes into Collaborator with Collaborator, so why not switch to GitHub and make our integration strong? So how it works with GitHub or GitHub Enterprise or Bitbucket, Bitbucket Server or GitLab is when you go and you create a pull request in one of those systems, Collaborator will see that pull request and immediately pick up on it. And it will immediately pull the changes into the review, and you don't need to use this client software. Right? It does all this for you automatically, and basically the Collaborator review shows the same thing as the GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket review. And when that review completes, it goes out and it can optionally close that feature branch, merge it in there for you, even delete the branch. All right, so great support for all those. If you want some in-depth information on that, please reach out to your sales contact here. Be happy to get you a customized demo, but that's the way that we see the world moving. So we're supposed to talk about SCMs, pre-commit, post-commit reviews, and I just want to make sure that we covered all these in here, right? Everyone generally on this call should be using or is most likely using one of these SCMs, but we'll support both at the same time or multiple SCMs at the same time, and this is good for larger organizations because, again, we're going to talk about workflow customizations, and just like different teams want to use different workflows, different teams may use different source control systems altogether. Right? For example, here at SmartBear, we're kind of a conglomeration of several different companies, and when you acquire a company, you get the employees, you get the software, but that software is being developed in a specific way, and we have different SCMs around the building. Right? For example, Test Complete, we're still using Mercurial, and they can use Collaborator Code Review because we still support it, and management can roll all the reports up across the entire organization, right, without caring about which SCM someone's on. Right? They can see the code reviews happening. All right, I'm going to take a quick pause, see if there are any questions that came in. Justin, have you been keeping track of those?
Not seeing anything.
Cool. Yeah, I always use the go-to-movie question window when I get going here. Let's see, about 13 minutes in. So let's see if I have a review with some metrics on it. All right, so I opened up a random review here, and in any review, you can go and click the details button, right? And this is going to give you pretty much everything we know about this review in terms of metrics and what happened. Right, so we're in the review summary screen, and this is for this is actually for a GitHub pull request review. Right, so this GitHub pull request right here was started, and then Collaborator came and it kept this in sync with the pull request. All right, let's look at some of the metrics generated on this GitHub pull request review. If we go to details, we're going to take a quick run through some of these metrics, and we're going to skip the ones that I think are boring. Of course, you get the ones that you would just expect. Again, boring. The review ID, the status, the title, who created it, when it opened, right? When it finished. Things that are a little bit more interesting, right? How many defects did we find in this review, right? Every defect is saved money. So we've stopped defects from going to QA, having to be documented by QA, sent back to dev to fix, and then tested again, right? Every defect here is dollar savings. Open defects versus total defects, right? We want to see them all essentially marked as fixed. And then some more interesting stuff that's really unique to Collaborator, right? How much time did we actually spend reviewing code or documents? Right, so this is kind of a funny timer, a tricky timer. It will track the time you spend in the diff viewer looking at code, right? Looking at changes A versus B. And if you minimize the diff viewer, it'll pause the timer. Put another window on top of it, it'll pause the timer. If you leave it open and go to lunch, it'll figure out, hey, you're not moving the mouse over the window, you're not scrolling, changing pages, and it will pause the timer. So it's relatively accurate. Our manual touts like a plus or minus, I think it's 15% accuracy on there, which is enough for you to get an idea about roughly how much time was actually spent reviewing, right? And where we see this kind of called out as really beneficial is a lot of times regulated industries, I think Lockheed actually mentioned this to us, that you go around the room in a formal code review meeting and it's how much time did you spend reviewing, right? So they can write this down, get the audit trail, and I say, yep, about 10 minutes. The guy to the left of me says, yep, about 10 minutes. And then you get to the third guy and he's like, well, I really didn't look at this much at all, but you know what? Yep, about 10 minutes, right? So this puts a little bit more of a real factor on it, and it'll track the time spent in the review for those auditing purposes, and you can say, hey, look, we know that we spent at least this much time looking at it, give or take. Right? So this does really, again, help our regulated friends, which is kind of the core audience for this tool. And because we have that inspection rate, because we have that time spent reviewing, and we specifically break it out by user and by role, we can see that reviewer Bob, right, hey, he spent about 3 minutes and 18 seconds reviewing code. Doesn't sound like he reviewed a lot of code, but maybe this is a small change. Well, we can go and take a look at what that means, kind of with a little bit more context, and we can see that, hey, Bob reviewed code at about 763 lines of code per hour. Bob could be really fast at reading. Maybe he just has an eidetic memory, but 763 is a little bit too fast. If anybody's read the Red Book, written by Jason Cohen, the original guy who wrote this tool, and I don't know if I have a copy around. I don't think I do. We recommend between 200 and 230 lines of code, somewhere in there, for reasonable code review, right? If you're reviewing code at 1,000 lines of code per hour, and you're probably not doing a great job. So this will allow you to put a metric on the rate at which code or documents are being inspected. Right. Outside of that, more stuff in the metrics that you would just expect, right? File counts for each specific type of file, line of code metrics, how many lines changed, how many were added, how many were removed, things like that. Lists of all the things that were specifically flagged as defects or issues that need to be created. Of course, we track all that. Collaborator is really going to give you, in most cases, more information than you need, so that when you need to go back and find something specific, it's probably already there and not something where, hey, I wish I had this metric. Pretty full-featured. And we can actually expand this even a little bit more. I can display comments, I can display the checklist history, and we even have audit trails in here, so if I were to scroll down, we can see who opened what file at what time. All right, so that's my rundown of the metrics. Hopefully that makes sense. And Justin, please feel free to stop me if any questions come in pertinent to what I'm talking about. All right, so we've talked a little bit about metrics. We keep coming back to the fact that different teams may be doing different things. You may want to collect metrics across all teams. Let's go talk about different teams working in with different configurations. So when you first create a review, if you've been to the 101, which I hope you have, we create a review like the one that I created, this pre-commit review that we created for this. If I go in here, it's still in my planning phase, right? And part of getting out of planning is making sure that I have a good template assigned to this. And the template is really going to drive the workflow. So if we do this, we can, if we expand this rather, we can see that we're on the default. That's fine, but we also have a couple other here. Dan's very stringent review. We have a Collab 301, which I assume was created in live in a 301 class, but we've got these other review templates. I'm going to leave it on default for a second, but default, you can see we've got this overview custom field. This is a custom field. We do ship with it. You'll see it out of the box, but default only has this overview custom field. Default allows authors, reviewers, and observers to join this review. It also requires one reviewer and one author. So those are the rules of this review. Right, there are no participant custom fields. The defect custom fields are the stock ones. Oops, the stock ones, it's just severity and type. Again, custom fields, but out of the box, when you file a defect, you say, how severe is it? What type is it? Now, let's go change this and see what happens. So I'll go in here and we'll change this template to Dan's stringent review. Now, I haven't seen this template, so let's see what changes. All right, so Dan added only a single custom field here. Not very good for dramatic effect. I wish there were a couple dozen custom fields, because you can add as many as you want, and there are plenty of different types of custom fields. So he's added a review importance here, and we can go and pick this. You know what? Let's pick humor me, because I like that one. So again, these custom fields here are tied to this template, Dan's very stringent review template, and he's also added this checklist. All right. So again, this checklist is tied to the stringent review template, and you can make checklists mandatory. So I could say, hey, you know what? This review is not allowed to complete unless everything on this checklist is marked off. I'm not sure if that setting is there right now, but again, all this is driven by the template. And when we scroll down, that template also, we just talked about author, reviewer, observer. This template has moderators, coders, reviewers, and testers. Right, so you can rename these roles. You can have up to 4 of them. You can say how many are required in a review, and this is done so that we can come to your process as much as possible. Right, if you already have a formal code review process and you have someone called a review lead, and you want to call someone in this a review lead, you can certainly do that. So you can rename a lot of different pieces of the software, right? And a lot of that gets covered in 301. But even down to the word group, you can rename group to say project or business unit. Right, you can rename the word defect to say finding or issue, because defect's a strong word with a lot of negative connotations, like, hey, you with all the defects, cut that out, right? So you can go ahead and change that to something that fits the nomenclature in your organization better. Again, we want to come to your workflow as much as possible. We don't want to tell you that there's only one way to do code review, and we want to support multiple workflows at the same time. Right, so different teams can do different things. You may have a web team using this, building your web page, and then you may also have a team building, I don't know, pacemakers with it. Right? There are different sets of rules probably for those two teams, because it's easy to fix a defect you ship in a website. You start shipping defects and pacemakers. Not only is it expensive to fix, it's expensive when people get hurt. Right? So the tool is designed again for everyone from very restricted waterfall type environments to places like us where we're agile. We'll call it Wagile because we're some sort of mix of waterfall and agile, and even down to DevOps, because we have DevOps teams doing the same thing. Right? Quick delivery. Hey, quick delivery. Well, let's get someone to look at the code before we deliver it to make sure that we're not moving so fast that we overlook obvious defects. All right. So a lot of the workflow customization specifics on how to do it are in the 301, but let's see what this other template looks like. Pick the Collab 301 template and see if we've got anything else interesting here. So we've got 2 custom fields in this. We still have review importance. We've got this other drop-down custom field, and these are kind of cool because depending on what I select in the first box, the values in the subsequent boxes change. So Project 2 has Module 1 and 2, but guess what? Project Dan only has Module Dan. Right, so interesting types of custom fields, and the custom fields themselves are very configurable. For example, strings, you can have regular expression validators. You can set custom fields due at any particular phase, and it'll prevent the review from going past that phase unless they are complete. Here we also have, let me see, do we have participant custom fields? None of these are participant custom fields, but you can also have participant custom fields where there are fields that would just show up here that only relate to me. All right, so each user, maybe going back to that former review meeting where everyone said 10 minutes, maybe you do some review outside of Collaborator on something, and you want to track that time too. For audit purposes, you can put in a field here that says how much time did you spend outside the review, and everyone gets a chance to fill that in. Right? We also see that quite common. Shops are trying to get CMMI level 4 or level 5. Sometimes you hold multiple roles in a review, and this participant custom fields allow you to say, you know what, I'm not only the reader, but I'm also the moderator, or I'm also in a different role. Right? So again, a lot of flexibility. The idea is to allow you to customize the tool to your heart's content, so that we're not saying, hey, this is the one way you do code review. It's quite the opposite. A lot of times you get people on the phone in a pre-sales engagement, and they say, hey, you tell us what to do. And I say, we ship with a default behavior, but don't assume that's it, right? As you start using the tool, you start seeing ways where, hey, maybe I would rather work this way, or if we had this option, it would help me out. There are a lot of customizations here, and if you're running into something every day where every day I have to click these extra 5 buttons, you may want to reach out to our customer success team. If you're not sure who your rep is, reach out to your to your sales rep, and they'll hook you up with customer success, and we'll be able to get you some advice, right? Because this tool is mature. It is 12, 14 years old. I'm not sure exactly how old it is. Justin, I forget. But there are tons of switches behind the scenes here, tons of bells and whistles, and we run into a lot of customers where they've been using the tool for 6 months or a year, and they're like, oh, this thing, though, I love it, but there's this one thing, and it's just like, oh, you can just go flip this switch, and we'll act in a different way for you. So again, the tool is designed to be customizable.
Yeah, and Rick, while you're kind of at a point of switching, I'm going to go backwards here for a moment. Somebody asked a question about metrics, and specifically about if you go back and forth between testing on a device and then doing some code review, and are the metrics going to be incorrect? And so, Rick, feel free to jump in with your thoughts here as well. But the interesting thing about our time metrics is we use an algorithm to help determine that time. So as you spend time in the UI here, we track that. And then if you leave the UI to go do something else, we'll keep up with that as well. And then we apply, like I said, an algorithm to all of it. And we actually did a case study years ago with, I believe it was Cisco that we did this, and we gave them stopwatches and said, hey, you guys keep track with your stopwatch and how much time you're spending in reviews. We'll use Collaborator's algorithm. We'll see who wins, kind of thing. And there is a variation. On Collaborator, it's not 100% accurate, but it is way more accurate than having people use stopwatches, that type of thing, because we do account for the fact that people aren't necessarily in the tool all the time, and when they are, then we'll begin tracking at that point. And then Rick, I don't know, maybe you've got some thoughts as well.
Similar to what I said before, I guess the expression is take it with a grain of salt. It's a plus or minus 15% accuracy, but we do think that we do a really good job on that, and we have done a bunch of case studies where, again, we actually have had people with stopwatches during the reviews. And if you're switching back and forth between that device and you minimize the window, you've paused the timer. If not, just the fact of not moving the mouse over the window after like 5 or 10 seconds, it's going to pause it. So it's fairly accurate.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of expand on that a little bit.
Okay. All right, so we talked about some of the workflow customization stuff. We're going to have a little bit of extra time, so I'm going to make sure I point out a few things. Right, so we talked about checklists really quickly. One thing that we haven't seen really is automatic links. And I can go in here and, for example, I just want to bring up our dog food server. You can go configure an automatic link, and then, for example, every time it sees a JIRA item that says, collab 123, you can go and say, hey, when you see collab 123, I really need you to forward that to, our JIRA server, and it'll linkify them. And that's also tied to the template. Another interesting thing about templates that we've added.
Well, I'll mention that link real fast, Rick. I think, that's one of those features that so many people don't realize exists and is so beneficial, because you can link out to anything you want, right? As long as it's got a web UI, you can build out those links. And the nice thing about links, which is where Rick is going, is they're tied to templates. So I'll let Rick continue with that thought. But this is, hugely valuable capability that so many people don't realize exists.
So this is obviously not going to work, but we can show the example. See if I got my regular expression right. So basically what it's going to do is go and say, hey, anything that looks like collab dash a string or a decimal, it should forward it to this URL, replacing the $1. I tried to do my JIRA, but I guess I got my Gista.
Yeah.
And if I were just to open any one of these reviews now, oops, 1 second. Yeah, automatic links are enabled by default. And we'll see how good my regex skills are. Probably not fantastic.
You know what's great about this automatic links is that they work everywhere inside a Collaborator. So whether you're doing it in chat like Rick is there, or whether you're doing it in the chat window in the diff viewer, inside of the custom field here, such as overview, if you create your own custom field. Also, if you have this information in a commit message, and when you create your review and it attaches it here to the review materials section, you'll see that link there as well. So just again, a nice capability that a lot of people don't know exists.
Yeah. There's a little hiccup in my server there. This thing's running on a local machine, but you can see the collab 111 is automatically a link. And if I were to go open it up, it goes to myjira.com, which I don't own, and it looks like it's forwarded me to some sort of site where it's going to try and phish me, so don't go there. But yeah, as Justin said, it'll work everywhere, whether it's in a chat message or for us, right? We always put the ticket in the Jira ticket in our commit message, so it shows up in commit messages too. A quick way to link. And in future versions, we're working on this, so no promise that it's ever going to come out, but we're going to pick up on that and then let Jira know that, hey, this was mentioned on this review, and provide a link from Jira back to the review. And we have some basic functionality like that now, but the new stuff is going to be a lot more automatic and a lot easier to use, so look out for that in 11.1, along with a lot of GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket improvements. Now that the team has really been using it, we're really just fixing every last little annoyance or anything that we don't like, we change as far as workflow there. So looking forward to an even more polished GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket set of integrations with our next release in July, early July.
Yep, that's the plan. As long as you stay on schedule, Rick, that's the key, huh?
All right.
Hold his feet to the fire.
We've got about 28 minutes left. Should have plenty of time to get through this other stuff. Let's go create a document review. Actually, I'm going to add a document review to this pre-commit review. Or add some documents to it. So you can store documents in version control if you want. Or you can store them on disk. Again, Collaborator really wants to be flexible, right? We already talked about this GUI client. You can also use the command line client, which can do everything this GUI client can do and more. In fact, everything you've seen me do in the web interface today can be done with the C Collab client, including adding comments and defects, transitioning review phases, modifying participants. You can pretty much script anything with this, and that's by design. All right, so not only can you create reviews with this GUI client, you can create reviews with the command line client, upload files either way. But you can also upload files just by dragging and dropping. So I can go, I've already got these files highlighted here. I'm just going to drag a bunch of files onto the review canvas, and they're all going to be uploaded. Right? And I could actually do the same thing with code. So maybe I have an unsupported source control system or some stuff I haven't even put in SCM yet. You can drag a whole bunch of source code onto the review canvas, make a bunch of changes locally, and drag it up there again, and it will diff everything for you. Right now I just added a single version of all these documents, and if we were to go look, they're kind of in a separate bucket because we do keep SCM systems bucketed out, right? So here are my subversion changes, but we're not using subversion for this. We've just uploaded a bunch of local files. And right now these files will have a status of 0, which means, hey, they haven't been modified. There's no actual diff here, and if I zoom in on one, hey, it's just one file. Right? So a lot of people don't realize that with Collaborator you can review images, and I could go in and click on this, and I could say, we like red better, please change it. Right, standard review process like you saw in the Collab 101, right? But I can go here, put a comment or a defect, doesn't really matter. And Dan, the code creator, is commenting on his own review, but that's fine. And we're going to go make some changes to these files and upload them and see what the diffs look like. But let's go through the different types, right? We looked at the image already. So pretty much any image that your browser can render, anything but a TIFF, should be fine in Collab. PNGs, JPEGs, even bitmaps, they're huge. It's up to you. We also support PDFs, so we can go in here, and here's a sample PDF doc. Apparently the single greatest PDF ever. And again, you can come in, drop pins on it, and have conversation. And right, say, hey, I love profit. That's fine. And we can go ahead and add that. And we're just kind of messing around right now. Go into a PDF, a Word doc, same thing. That is a pretty sweet whale. These are not my examples, by the way, but I am entertained by them. So again, we can come in here and provide some feedback on a document or an image. It doesn't matter whether the document's DOCX or a PDF. Essentially, everything gets converted to PDF behind the scenes anyways. So anything that you can PDF, you can put into a review. And we've been talking about doc review, or I mentioned it earlier, and how this is really a focus for us because, in my opinion, we already really have the code review market locked down. We are a pure play code review tool, in that market, kind of the Cadillac. And we also offer document review, and there's a lot of room for us to improve in document review, and we're working on it. Most recently, we've added support for much higher quality PDFs because we get a lot of people that want to review mechanical drawings, electrical drawings, right? Especially for mission critical stuff. There are a lot of organizations that have a 100% success criteria or 100% mission success, right? Where, hey, we're going to go launch a spacecraft. Guess what? It can't fail. There's no try number 2. So they review everything, and everything gets multiple levels of sign off, and they want to use Collaborator to review hardware design. So we're working more and more to add features for those sort of teams. So again, in the next release coming out, you'll see a lot higher quality on the PDF, so that if you've got a very detailed electrical schematic and you're trying to see some small traces on there, you'll be able to zoom in far enough to see them, whereas the current tool, they might be a little bit blurry. So that's what we're doing. We're marking up these documents. It doesn't really matter the type, right? DOCX, PDF, expense report, Excel file here. So one thing I do want to note, this is a terrible example, I think. You're going to see a little better like this. One thing I do want to note is that we strip all formatting from Excel because it's more of a scientific review. If you want to review colors and font sizes and things like that, you can just print it as a PDF. Here we're more interested in the actual content of the cell. And if I were to bring this up, you can actually switch between formulas and values with this little button, right? So right now we're looking at the subtotal field, and that's what it looks like. And if I click this, there's the value, right? So I can switch back and forth between the formula and the value, and let's go make a change to this, and then we'll see how Collaborator handles difference. So first, maybe I'll edit this PNG and make this red. I like red. There's fiery red attitude today on Tuesday morning. Today's Tuesday, right? Mm-hmm. And we'll save this red. And what else do we want to do? Edit this expense report, sure. You know what? I think, where's our subtotal? Right here. I think all of our services should cost an extra $500 because we're that good. So add 500 to that. The PDF I'm not really going to change because I only have one copy of it, and we'll change the Word document. I'll go in here and, I don't know, just move it. And I'm just going to brand this with my name. And we're going to upload these to the review. Make sure I get them all here. PDF, sample Word doc. Now you can see that some of these have been modified, and that's why they show this one. As in, this has been reworked once over the course of this review. I've seen 2 different versions of this document. And first we can go look at the logo. Right. You can see that we went, from blue to red. Right. We can even go and say, hey, you know what? Show me these layered over each other. Right. And you can actually use this slider down here when you're dealing with images to fade from one to the next. Kind of useful for GUI design, logo design, things like that. Pretty popular feature. Let's go back. Let's take a look at this Excel file, right, where I wanted to add that $500 because I think we're totally worth it. If we go take a look, and we scroll down, we can see that this box is yellow. Right, so we're diffing it. You're seeing the change. Right, Collaborator's like, hey, this isn't the same as it was before. If you look, yep, the value went from 733 to 1233. And if you want to know why, you can, again, click this and see that, you know what, Rick decided to add $500 here to every order just because. Right, so again, we're more focused on the data in Excel than we are the formatting. If you really care about the border color and the way the document looks aesthetically, then you just want to print it as a PDF and upload it. This was initially added because we had developers that were essentially trying to review long lists of, hey, here are all the unit tests we're going to run, right? And it's easy to have that in Excel, and it's easy just to upload it to Collab. So, that was the initial kind of reason that we pushed this out there. If you go look at this Word doc, right, again, you can see that we are diffing this stuff. Right, hello from Rick is green. I don't think I deleted anything, so it's not, hasn't been removed. Some other cool tools that we've added in most recent release is 11. Yeah, 11.0. This stuff came out. Gets a little better, and 12.0 is the ability to click and drag. So now I can zoom in with my mouse and I can drag around. Right, this wasn't available before, and again, this is more because say you're reviewing some schematics. They may be huge, and having to grab these bars is difficult. So you want to make it feel more like CAD, right? And you can even lock the two sides together, and they move in somewhat sync as long as they're close enough to each other. Right, so we've added those new features in 11.0. If you're not in 11.0, go check them out. They're pretty cool. That about covers the doc review stuff that I wanted to go over. Pretty standard document review kind of demo there. Maybe a little bit sloppy. I haven't been a sales engineer or given a presentation like this in a good 9 or 10 months. Kind of miss it. You ever miss it, Justin?
Absolutely.
All right, so one last thing I want to take a look at, and full disclosure here, I haven't tried out the IDE integrations on this box, but it'll totally work. Let's open up Visual Studio and Eclipse, and we can take a look at some of our IDE integrations. So again, this is more stuff that we're working on now as well. So what we're looking at here is version, it's tough to see, we can zoom in, 11.0. 11.1 has a lot of changes as far as nice little enhancements, nice little bug fixes, better workflow, and much better support for TFS. We've actually completely, if anybody's using TFS, we've completely rewritten TFS now to be native. Most of our tools here, for example, Perforce, rely on the Perforce command line. Hey, where's the Perforce command line so we can interrogate it and get the changes we want? If we were to go look at TFS, same thing. Hey, where's the tf.exe command line so we can go interrogate it? And the next release, all of this stuff is gone. We don't need the tf.exe. We use a native TF library. So it means it's a lot faster for TFS than it was previously, a lot easier to configure, and much better support. Basically support anything from TFS 2010 to the latest, and we don't have to worry about it because Microsoft's their API or their jar file is really, it's that nice. So again, look out for some changes in the next release coming out in July. That stuff's in QA right now. I can't wait to get it out, share it with you guys. But what we want to talk about right now quickly are the IDE integrations. So we have two major IDE integrations, Visual Studio and Eclipse. We have an IntelliJ integration as well, but I won't show that because it's really rudimentary. It just allows you to create reviews from Git and Subversion directly in the IDE. Visual Studio and Eclipse, excuse me, are going to allow you to do most, if not all, of your review inside the IDE. So I open up Visual Studio, and you can see we've got this nice Collaborator window. It's a standard Visual Studio tool window, and it's going to show me all the reviews that I'm involved in that are open that I care about. And I can open them up and work on them right here. And this is a nice modern WPF application, Prism 6, model view controller type stuff. which for the devs out there, it's kind of cool, right? Pretty modern. But the point is that I can go in here and we see the same thing we see in the web interface, right? We've got the review workflow, right? The current state. We can see the participants. We can edit any of this information if we need to add a participant, etc. Everything's here. And then, more importantly, we can go in and we can look at the changes. And this is SCM agnostic. We really don't care what source control system you're using. We're using the Visual Studio diff viewer here, kind of just overriding it. So the syntax highlighting is based on Visual Studio support for syntax highlighting. So it's a little bit less friendly with things like Java, but anything that you write and see in Visual Studio and diff here, then it's going to use the Visual Studio stuff. Other than that, it works just like the web. I can go in here and I can add comments. Why are you doing this? Oops, I hit the Alt button. If I just come here and say why, I have this conversation, and that's immediately reflected in my IDE, all the other developers' IDEs that may be looking at this, and the web. So this is all real time, just like the rest of the product. If someone were to go back into the web and comment back to me, we'd see it pop up here in just a second. Right, so a lot of developers really like this, the ability to do this review right inside their IDE. Pretty powerful. Let's see if we've got Eclipse kicking around. So I can show you what Eclipse looks like. Eclipse does not use WPF, right? It's using the Eclipse kind of UI. So it does not look as cool as the Visual Studio one, that's for sure. It looks like pretty much everything else in Eclipse. So we'll take a quick look at that. Got about 13 minutes left, so still plenty of time for any questions that may have come in. Eclipse, everything is basically powered by this collaborator perspective. Anybody that's familiar with Eclipse know there are all sorts of perspectives. All right, so I can switch back to the regular Java one, which is this is kind of the stock way that it looks. But when I click this collab perspective, a few things happen. Right, we get the conversations window. We get a list of action items, which is essentially that list of reviews. The same ones we see in Visual Studio are listed here. Right, and I can open up that same review. Which one were we looking at? Sorry, my eyes are bad. I had to lean in. So review number 26. And I'm actually going to open this file back up. All right, I can go in here. I can open up review number 26. All right, and this is the same review that we're looking at in the web or in Visual Studio or here in Eclipse. Again, Eclipse is a little bit less aesthetically pleasing in my opinion, but everything is still here. And if I were to go into main.java, right, again, we see the same thing. All right. Dan, the code creator, says why. I think I'm still logged in as Dan over here anyways, but I'm going to talk to myself. I'm just going to say because I like it. And it makes me smile. Right, and we can have this conversation back and forth, again, from IDE to IDE or from IDE to the web. It really doesn't matter. I hope to see us extend IntelliJ at some point, but I don't think it's going to happen this year at least. But I would love to see the same thing in IntelliJ. And again, you can see that that made it right into Visual Studio immediately. And if I went and opened the web, believe me, it'd be there too. And that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to talk about today. Any other questions come in, Justin, or anything that you can think of that maybe I should show off for the next few minutes?
I'm not seeing any other questions that have come in that we, that haven't been addressed or touched on. So I think we're in pretty good shape there.
Yeah. No worries on finishing up a few minutes early, giving everyone a few minutes of their day back. Anything interesting you think is coming up in the next release or that we're about to put out that you want to mention?
Wow, put me on the spot.
Hey, you're good at this, man. You're the coolest guy in the room at all times. So.
Oh, gee. I'm trying to think of what would be really worth sharing here.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, so just some things. Really, I would say that 11.1 is really some smaller little, I like to call them little delighters or little features that people have been asking for or are interested in. From an administrative perspective, people have been asking for the ability to archive off, the content cache, right? So that's something that's coming out. Copying reviews. We've actually got a lot a lot of organizations end up having someone who's responsible for creating reviews as part of their process, because they have to make sure that there's a review for each of the different files, file types, requirements or code or whatever. And so somebody's actually responsible for ensuring that that project has the appropriate number of reviews. And so part of their responsibility is creating those reviews. And so we're going to be making that process easier, so you can actually copy previous reviews, so you don't have to go fill in the same information over and over and over again. So that's pretty cool. I'm trying to think of other items that are really top of mind that might be interesting for folks.
Couple for me. I mean, I'm going to say that I'm really looking forward to the Jira integration. That's still being worked. And again, we use Jira internally and we use GitHub internally, so we've been really working on GitHub. So we're really working on Jira right now at the same time to make sure that what we deliver makes a lot of sense. It's really easy to use, really easy to configure, and just generally works for people without a lot of back and forth with admins. I know I'm looking forward to that. And then the ability to subscribe to a specific review template seems silly, but hey, if someone's using review template A and group A always uses review template A, I want to be on every review, you can now do that.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good one to point out as well. And then, like you said, a lot of stuff with TFS, right?
Yeah.
A lot of improvements there for those TFS users out there.
Other than that, I hope to see everyone at SmartBear Connect. I tried to get a developer dunk tank, but I don't think they're going to do it. I would totally line up to have people throw softballs and dunk me. But unfortunately, it'll probably be a little too cold in September. But we've got a lot of great stuff lined up. There's a little bit of collaborator content, but there's a whole ton of content related to quality at SmartBear Connect. And really, that's our business is quality, whether it's code review or API design or how you test your product. There's a whole ton of information here. This is our first user conference. I think tickets are cheap. I think you can get them for $275 right now. Early bird.
$3.99.
$3.99.
Yeah.
Okay, $3.99.
Yep.
Still cheap. Boston is going to be beautiful. The leaves will start changing colors, and yeah, anyone that's interested in more information, go to this website and feel free to reach out to Alex or anyone in marketing if you want to know or if you have any questions. But yep.
Customers at smartbear.com.
Yep. Cool.
All right, hold on. Before we go, we got one other question. We'll answer it.
Sure.
And then we'll sign off. So the question was, how do I show more lines in a review than the diff shows? All right. So actually, inside the diff viewer, when you're looking at the diff viewer and you're looking at your lines of code, there is actually an option there in your display preferences to determine how much context is provided within a specific file. So you can absolutely modify that to show a specific amount of context if you'd like to do so. So hopefully that answers your question. And from my perspective, I just want to say thank you so very much for being customers and for joining us today and walking through Collaborator 201.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin, and thank you, Rick. We will see everyone next time.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
All right, thanks for joining.